Well, hello everybody, and you are very welcome indeed to this episode of Fantastic Female Fridays. My name is Susan Hayes-Cullerton, and I want to tell you a little bit about the way in which we are going to run today's episode. So first of all, to all of you out there who may or may not be familiar with Fantastic Female Fridays, I want to offer you all a very special welcome, as of course we are streaming this episode live, and we are on the very close run-up now to the festive season. So as we bring 2021 to a close, I wanted to bring a special guest to you who is going to talk about the narrative that we have around money. Now, of course, this is a time of year when a lot of spending does take place, but also a lot of planning and a lot of thoughtfulness around what we're going to do when we get to that stage, whereby, of course, we might be setting New Year's resolutions or have new financial projects for the new year ahead. So for all those reasons, I decided that it would be a really good idea to introduce you to Jen Hemphill, who is going to talk to us about shaping the narrative around money. For those of you, like I say, who may not be familiar with Fantastic Female Fridays, this show is all around how we can enable women to be more confident and more competent around their money. Now, we know you ladies out there are super competent as it is, but what we want to do is really tweak your financial muscle so that you can build and grow your impact using your money. Now, this show, of course, is a VectorVest show, and VectorVest is focused on helping investors to manage risk and optimize return, particularly for DIY investors. And today is going to have more of a personal finance theme to it, as opposed to core investing during the first half of the show. And then after that, I am going to take you through some themes that we're going to examine in the VectorVest program. First of all, as I always like to do, would you please let me know where you're tuning in from? I can see there's lots and lots of you there. As I always do, you know, when I look over my screen, I'm looking at my phone. So glad to hear that I can see here that we are loud and clear. That's brilliant to hear. So can you please pop there into the chat where you are tuning in from? We'd love to hear what parts of the world that you're tuning in from. And of course, I'm here live. It is 6 minutes past 4 here where I am live in Dublin, where Jen is going to be joining me from very shortly. It is 6 minutes past 11 a.m. So we are operating on Eastern time. And I can see that we have somebody who's joining us here from Athens, somebody that's joining us here from Saskatoon. Okay, that's a new place on me. Yes, please do keep them coming. And I always love this part of the show where I can just see the geographical reach of where people are tuning in from all over the world. Generally, our Fantastic Female Fridays audience can stretch all the way from California all the way to New Zealand. I see we also have somebody who's checking in here from the US. We also have somebody that is joining us here as well from Ocala in Florida, Ruba in USA, New York, Cleveland, Ohio. Hello, Antoinette, you're very welcome. Hello, Kelly, you're very welcome indeed as well. Great to have you back with us. Do please keep them coming as we go along. Okay, Calgary there in Canada as well. Hello, Jim, you're very welcome. And of course, just in case you're wondering where I'm seeing all this, it's on the live chat. If you are tuning in on a mobile device, you need to minimize the camera and then just go up to the top in the middle of your screen and click on chat, and that's where you'll see everything. Hello, Nick says hi. Hi, Nick, you're very welcome today. And then if you're on a desktop device, of course, then you just click on the chat button and you will see everything that's happening. Now, as you have questions for Jen, please do pop them in there through the chat. I'm keeping a very close eye. I will feed these through to her. And what I will also do is I will also ask for your commentary on some of the themes that she is going to share with us today. So like I say, please do keep your comments coming. And naturally, we'd love if you would like the video, because of course that does help people to find this content along the way. Okay, I see Nader here is joining us from Toronto. You're very welcome. Now, what I'm going to do is just want to tell you a little bit about Jen and what I know of her before I introduce her, and she's going to be live here on your screens then. So first of all, I first came across her when I was, as you know, I love Twitter, and I was tweeting one day and I came across what she does, and I came across the nature of the work that she does as well. Particularly, she focuses a lot on women. She focuses an awful lot on the personal development side of money, and she's a really big believer, as I am, in giving people a process and holding them accountable to that. And I'll tell you why I know that about her in a few moments. Hello there. I see we have another person who's just joining us from Ontario, Canada. And then I went over to her Instagram, and I saw that there was a real consistency to her message, but particularly there is a certain cohort of women that she's very passionate about, and we're going to talk about that as well today. But then I went to her podcast, and I have to say that Jen's podcast it's very thought-provoking. It genuinely is very thought-provoking, and we're going to share the links to all of Jen's socials as well as her podcast, etc. afterwards. But what I found about what Jen did was that she really focuses on practicality, but she knows that practicality with the wrong mindset can really be limiting. And thirdly, she particularly loves the forum of a podcast as well. You're going to find out lots more about her when I now bring her on to our show. So what I'm going to first of all do is bring her live in here. And let me just make sure that we are doing this right and proper. Okay, and here she is. Here we go. Hello indeed, Jen. It is wonderful to have you here with us.
Well, thank you so much, Susan. And it's so nice to be here. And thanks for the kind words. Now I have to live up to all that.
Yes, you do. But there is no problem with that whatsoever at all. We know that you're going to be more than well able to do that indeed, Jen. So maybe could we start off, first of all, will you just tell us a little bit about you and the nature of the work that you do, first of all, in your own words?
Sure. Well, you've covered a lot of it, which was awesome. But I'm what's called an accredited financial counselor, an AFC, which is not a financial advisor. So please don't ask me to give you guidance on investments, because that's not what I do. But what I do is personal finance education, and really more in a holistic way, which you alluded to. So I teach simplicity, and I provide financial education in a way that connects in a deeper level, and it makes sense. So it's simple, because when something is simple and practical, it's more doable. And when it's more doable, we are more consistent. And when we're more consistent with the actions we're taking with our money, we have more success. So we can save more, so we can invest, so we can reach those financial goals that we've always aspired to. So that's really my premise of why I do what I do, or not why I do, but what I do. And as you mentioned, I focus on women, and more really have been in the past few years, really niching down to where I felt I was needed as a Latina. In the US, I'm sure it's probably very similar across the globe, where there's that gender wage gap between in terms of women versus men. Here in the US, there's that gender wage gap as well. And in Latinas, we've got the largest gender wage gap. So really, my whole mission is to provide that financial education in a simple approach to give women more confidence, so they can just do what they aspire with their finances. Because you and I know women are in general better investors, and they just lack that confidence. So that's what I'm here to do.
Well, Jen, that was the very first episode of Fantastic Female Fridays that we had, which is how women and men actually invest differently. I wasn't aware of that, actually, is that the largest wage pay gap in the world is with the Latina community. So that's certainly an interesting point that we might explore later on. But the two key things I wanted to pick out of your message is consistency and simplicity. And I might just ask this out to our audience today. Consistency and simplicity, that is what Jen considers are most important when it comes to managing your money. Whether, again, you mentioned whether it's saving or investing or spending or anything. Can I just put that out there to our audience? When you think of money, what words come to mind? So, like I say, Jen says consistency and simplicity. And afterwards, after our conversation with Jen, I'm now then going to take you through some ways in which we can put Jen's advice into action, or her guidance into action, using the VectorVest system. And they're two words that I'm going to reiterate again and again: consistency and simplicity, how we can put that into action. So I'm just waiting to see here. I see Barry has just joined us here from Colorado, USA. Never been to Colorado. It's one of the places on my bucket list for sure. So what words, and Jen, what I'm going to do is when people send the words in here on the chat about what they think when it comes to money, I might just feed those back to you and let's just see what you have to say. So would really love there in the chat, please do pop in when we think of the word money, investing, spending, whatever it might be, what words come to mind? Okay, well, while we're waiting for our audience to share those with us, Jen, can I just ask you, like, the theme of our show today is changing the narrative, and when you and I met a while back to prepare for today, that was particularly a theme that you felt very passionate about. And what have you seen in other people that leads you to the importance of changing the narrative? And just by the way, just now that I have said this, I see Mark has said here, for example, that when he thinks of money, he thinks of freedom. So like, I'm just thinking, because that's why I really want to get the audience's interaction here. When it comes to changing the narrative, what narrative have you seen maybe that's been unhealthy that needs to be changed?
Well, I think when I think of changing the narrative, I think of three things in particular. One, when we think of money, and I'm glad someone said freedom, but when we think of money, it feels so taboo to talk about, right? Because when we talk about money, automatically, just I think from what we're programmed or what we're seeing all the time, is that we seem to need to talk about the bills. We need to talk about the debt that we have or how we're living paycheck to paycheck. And so those are topics that, depending on your situation, can bring you down, and therefore it becomes taboo. And in addition to that, it's something that hasn't been talked about in our family, so it becomes taboo. But we need to really change the narrative in the sense of what talking money can mean. Talking money can also mean highlighting what we learned. It can mean really sharing with a friend or a coworker a tip that we learned, that you implemented, that worked for you. So it's not just about, oh my goodness, I'm never getting out of debt, or I have all this debt and I don't want to talk about it because I feel guilty and I have a lot of shame. But it's also, we all, no matter where we are at financially, we do have financial strengths. We do things well worth our money. And it's about acknowledging and having that awareness, because if we are focusing on the bad, it's hard for us to get ahead. So we need to really ask ourselves, what kind of things do we do well with our money, and what are our financial strengths? Because if you feel you don't have any, I want you to really take a good look and really dig deep on that, because I guarantee you do. So that's one area that I feel like when changing the narrative, that's what I think about. And the other part is that we can't teach money the same to everyone. So yes, all of us, in terms of, we need to focus on really connecting well with whom we're teaching. So that's why at first, when I started this, I decided, let me focus on women and money, because how we think money as women and what we need to think about, since we live longer, is different. So how we teach money to different groups, we need to be able to connect with them. And so it just really, we need to go beyond teaching how to get out of debt, how to invest, and how to budget, those type of things. Those are important, but it's about the connection. Because when, for those that are on live right now or just watching this later, it's so meaningful when you're hearing someone, maybe they're talking about finances, but maybe they share a story that you connect with. And when you hear that, you're thinking, that person really gets me. And when you have that connection piece, that's when you really start paying attention, because you've got that connection first. So I think changing the narrative in terms of, it's not a cookie cutter approach, personal finance, in terms of when we teach or how we do personal finance, because that's why it's called personal. It's unique. And the third thing that we need to change the narrative when it comes to personal finance education, we hear about how to budget, how to save, how to invest, all those things, but we don't hear about our money stories and how much of an impact. And what do I mean by a money story? It's how we were brought up as a child. if you think about your money memories as a child, what are those money memories? What you saw, what you heard, what you experienced, because ultimately that shapes you for life. And that shapes you how you manage money. That shapes your perception of money. And we don't have that awareness. They don't teach that in personal finance, which when we are not aware of that money story or that past money story, sometimes we recreate it. And when we recreate it, it keeps us stuck. So when we think about our money story, we need to have that awareness. And that's a narrative that's why I do one of the reasons why I do what I do is I want to change that narrative. It's not just you can be good at budgeting, but if in the back of your mind, you continue to have thoughts of, I'm never going to get out of debt, that's going to keep you stuck. You're not going to go broke, but it's not going to allow you to move faster or move the needle as much as you could, should you be aware of those money stories and changing. And it's really all about that mindset.
Well, I think you've given us three really good points there. And again, I'm just going to reiterate these back to our audience here so that everybody is aware of what we are talking about. Is first of all, you talk about taboo and how we don't like the focus on the bad stuff. Now, I'm just going to check here, and I see that a couple of, we can just see here, a couple of comments have come in. And particularly they are, I'm just going to say here, we have Casonia here says lifestyle and investing is what she thinks of when it comes to money. And Kelly Martin talks about a better quality of stress level management is what she thinks about when it comes to money. This is what I think is really interesting is, and maybe this actually ties in with the money story like you've been saying. So just want to maybe if you could just think about those for a moment, Jen, and we can just think about that in the context of the next question. I'm just going to summarize what I've heard you say. Is number one is the whole focus on taboo. Is money taboo? Is there, whether it's debt, whether it's overspending, or maybe it is investing, maybe not something that was spoken about at home and there's a certain connotation with that. So I'd like to put that out to our audience as well, is what do you think is taboo about money today? I'd love to hear that from you. So what elements today around money do you think there still persists around a taboo? And again, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. The second thing you said was you can't teach money the same to everybody. And yes, you talk about, women versus men. There's other ways too. And maybe it is people who have got a financial background and those who don't. Maybe people who have a negative association with money, that there's never enough, and people who've got a very abundant mindset. And of course, then there's also geographical considerations. And then the third thing, which I'm really, really hoping that we're going to get a chance now to explore, is our money story. Our money memories, and particularly what you said, this refers to how we were brought up. And if the story, or if the money story is not, if we're not aware of our money story, then we're at risk of recreating it. So I'm just going to, again, put it out to the audience there. So tell us, what do you think is taboo about money? And what do you think your money story is? And also what your thoughts are as regards you can't teach money the same to everybody. And of course, particularly you said that it has to connect with them. So can we now, Jen, talk about the Latina investor, the Latina money story? Like, what can we learn from Latinas and what's their financial history that maybe we could get an insight to? What is the Latina money story?
So I'm going to be talking more about the Latina in the US, not worldwide. So when it comes to Latinos, when it comes to the Latinx community in general, there is a wealth gap, a drastic wealth gap in the US. There is a report from the Pew, and I hope I'm saying this correctly because me and pronunciation, we don't always get along, but the Pew Research Center, it was done in 2016. And according to that study, the wealth gap is drastic, where Latinos, there was a $21,000 net worth, or that's how they define the wealth, versus the whites, there was 171,000. So that's significant. Why is that? Why does that happen? So of course there's there's a variety of reasons that could be, because within the U.S., when we're talking about the Latinx community, and I'm sure there's probably some similarities in different countries because we're all over the world, but there are different subgroups in the U.S. that have different needs. It may be that someone is second, third generation. So they're very similar to the financial system in the US. So they have an advantage. It could be someone that just recently immigrated. So the needs and what they need in terms of financial education is different, because if they just recently immigrated to the US, they're not going to have an understanding necessarily of the financial system in the US. There's different scenarios within. Like I said, it's very diverse, and that diversity within the community also creates a need in terms of that teaching of what they need to know. And so that's also goes to my point earlier, is that we can't just teach personal finance the same to everybody. We have to be able to connect. So when it comes to Latinas, and they're Latinas women, of course, they are also good investors, but there's also that disparity there's income. Like women in general, Latinas can maybe take a pause in their career, where in the Latino culture, we tend to be very family oriented. We take care of our family. So they may take a pause and not work and take care of their kids or take care of a parent, whatever that may be. So that also attributes to that wealth gap. To that, there's also the income gap. As I mentioned earlier, is in between all the women, the Latinas, when there's the ladder of Latinas and the white women, there's a significant gap in terms of the income. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it is significant. And so when we're talking about Latinas, they may take a pause. They may have access or lack of access to some resources. There's so many different things that can impact that. But I think getting the word out there and plus, there's no talk about money. There's no talk about investing, right? And a part of money is we need to learn how to invest and build wealth, because we want to be able to be 60, 70, 80 years old, whenever you want to stop working, if you will, and live a good life, right? So I could go in all sorts of different directions, and I know I'm kind of getting sidetracked. So that's the first thoughts that come to mind. So if there's anything more specific, let me know.
It's interesting how the culture, as you say, the culture around family, because family, of course, it's a very strong virtue, and it's a very high value that many people have. Mm-hmm. But in this particular community, as you say, it can exacerbate that sense of an income gap. But also, I mean, that number, can I just check? Did I note that number down properly? That the according to the study that you mentioned from 2016, 21,000 is the net wealth in the Latina community versus 171,000, net worth for a typical white community. Is that, did I get that number right?
Yes, that is correct.
That is really, really, really striking. And indeed, as you say, knowledge around the system is also very important as well. That can lead to a very different experience of interfacing with the system as well.
Right. And then within Latinos, wealth it's in general, and I'm talking about in general terms, it's not anything that we necessarily talk about. In the Latino community, it's about survival. It's about, if you have a roof over your head, we tend to have that mentality, well, we have to be grateful for what we have. So if we have a roof over our head, we have enough money to eat and provide for our families, we should be grateful for that. Why should we need more? Why should we be striving for more? So that's a part of it, right? There's also the spirituality component of, we tend to say, si Dios quiere, if God wants, right? So if, let's say, and that's like more old school in a way, because I'm seeing millennials and such not have this mentality. But si Dios quiere, if God wants, is, well, if God wants us to have more money, or if God wants us to get out of debt, then so be it. But it's it's about, yes, having faith, but it's also about taking those actions necessary to reach those financial goals, saving, getting out of debt, investing in that and such. So there's different components within the culture that also attribute to that. And when it comes to wealth, if they're immigrants or they're coming from Latin American countries where even if they're second gen, and again, money is not talked about, what is happening in different Latin American countries? Yes, there may be pension systems or 401ks, but there's also that lack of access for certain demographics of people, right? So in those certain demographics of people, maybe they're lower income, they come to the US for a better way of life, but again, they come to the US and they don't have that access, or they don't necessarily have that knowledge, because if it wasn't possible in their country, what are they going to think that it is possible in terms of setting up for retirement? So there's so many different things.
There are, and that's Jen, why I really wanted to bring you on the show today, is to understand that. And I think it's important to have that openness and sense of perspective on the status quo in other communities as well. Can we maybe bring the conversation more centrally to the money story point again, and particularly around the theme of today's show around changing the narrative when it comes to investing? How do you think people's narrative needs to change there, or what narratives have you come across, particularly when it comes to this? Because I would anticipate a lot of our audience here would be quite open to investing, but I don't want to make that assumption. And again, those of you who are joining us here live, pop your questions there into the chat so that I can give them to Jen, or maybe share your own perspective on the openness to investing.
Yeah, well, typically what I see is that maybe that people aren't at a point to even investing. That investing is only when you have a lot of money. So those are the main things, or when I get to, or it's that delayed mentality. When I pay this debt off, or when I make more money, I have this extra money, then I'll start investing, right? So, and sometimes that doesn't happen in terms of maybe they do make more money and then they forget about that priority. But I think though, that is going back to our money story, because in our mindset, right? Because maybe they didn't have an example from their parents or grandparents, whoever they were brought up, whoever they were raised by, with a mindset of investing. Maybe they didn't see that. I know for me, I'm from Colombia, but my dad's American. So it's very interesting, the mentality of my dad, who is an American, and my mom, who is from Colombia, where my dad, security was a big value in terms of, yes, it's important to invest and it's important to have insurance. And for my mom, not that wasn't important, but the biggest priority was stability, which equated having a house, investing in a home, right? So I think that money story is very important to have an awareness, because that will make you understand why you're thinking how you're thinking. And even better, if you have a partner, if you talk about these money stories, it will also help you better understand your partner and why they manage the money the way that they do, right? So another thing that I see is that investing is hard. And even though it is not hard in your eyes and my eyes, it's about the way the information is presented. It's about who they were in contact with when they maybe wanted to know about investing. I think that is shifting. I've seen that shift in the past couple of years, where there's a lot of, and not necessarily professionals, but more of people that decided, well, you know what, I'm going to start investing, and they're taking people on their journey. I see a lot of Instagram accounts. Of course, we can talk about whether that's the right information or the wrong information. But my point here is that people are talking more. And what happens with these people that that have Instagram accounts that are really taking people on their journey towards their investing, toward in their net worth and all that, is that the people that are watching are connecting with them because they're relatable. They connect with that person because maybe that person had a ton of debt and this person that is watching them also has a ton of debt, right? So that investing is hard, I think, is still true today, but I think with the different social media accounts that are talking about investing, with, I think, professionals in the field really having an awareness that we need to change how we teach it, not giving some booklets that has all these legality terms and jargon that who really takes the time to read it, let's be honest. And so I think that those are the things that I see most. So again, we just need to, as you know, you and I know you do a fantastic job. I think it's just important for professionals to do a better job in connecting, because it's not the person that's trying to learn. It's not their job to they're wanting to learn, but it's not their fault that things that are available to them, it's maybe hard to understand or they don't really relate. They have to relate and connect as well.
Well, you're connecting with our audience here, because I just want to read out some of the comments that are coming through, and that is Luke says, the best Latina investor entrepreneur known to me was my grandmother, living up in the hills of Chihuahua, Mexico, where money was non-existent, just bartering. Today I see how billionaires and how they can have a different approach to cash. And then another person then says here, this society does not teach our kids investing. And I think that that's the point, really, is that what we do need to focus on. I find there's three things that really stood out to me there, Jen. Number one is the delayed mentality. And that one really resonates, actually. As you say, I will invest when I have a lot of money. I will invest when such and such thing happens. And maybe they are changing goalposts. Maybe it's the delayed mentality that actually continuously delays until there's a certain maybe trigger, like, okay, I really need to get a pension now, and how am I going to manage a pension? Another person says here, Maria says, white culture teaches about money while Latina teaches family values. And again, I mean, this is what today's episode is all about, is appreciating the differences between us, but also understanding, of course, that there is an awful lot of commonality. Again, this is the reason I really wanted to reach out to you. The second thing, though, that you said, and I'd love to hear our audience's thoughts on this as well, is that you say investing is hard. And I think there's a perception out there that, and you talk about the jargon and everything. I think that there is a perception out there that it is like full of jargon, full of people who are trying to catch you out, full of expense. You never really get anywhere anyway, and if you do, it just gets taxed. So what's the point? So, instead, I think that there's a much healthier narrative out there, all right, certainly, for sure. But the whole idea that it's hard is that it's going back to your point about consistency and simplicity, really, is that it's actually not. It does take action. Yes, it does take you. There is education involved, often driven by yourself, but certainly there are a variety of these things needed. And then the third thing that you said is that we need to do a better job in connecting ultimately with the people in question. And all of these, like I say, these points I'm going to discuss with people afterwards. I'm just interested there in maybe the themes that are coming through from our audience here today as we're live on YouTube. Jen, what do you think of the whole idea of, that sense of looking up to your grandmother, the sense of bartering in society as a financial transaction? Also, as well, Maria says investing is easy with VB Nation. You're very kind to say that, Maria, and I know that the team here in the background will love to hear that. But also, about culture being about family. Does Latina culture promote investing, not just investing with money, but does it promote the idea of using your resources to have more in the future? Could you just maybe reflect on a couple of the points that are coming through like that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to what you're asking, some things come to mind. Is one, and resourcefulness. The community is very, very resourceful. If I think of mi abuelita, my grandmother, and when she came, no money, was widowed at a young age with with no education and 3 kids to raise. She was very, very resourceful. So there is no doubt that the community is very resourceful. And this is, of course, other communities are as well. But when it comes to, so resourcefulness is the one thing that comes to mind. Is investing talked about? I think that's changing. I think that that narrative that is definitely changing. Hasn't been talked about in the past? No, because maybe it wasn't anything that they thought was possible for them or that existed for them. Again, it was about survival and just, hey, if we have a roof over, the striving to have a house and our kids taken care of. And again, it's just about being grateful for what you have. But I think that is shifting. I think the communication or the message of the importance of investing, the importance of building wealth is getting out there. Like I said, I've seen this grow in the past couple of years, which makes me really happy to see that and showing to others that it is possible. It is possible to invest. You don't have to have a ton of money to invest. You can get started. You can invest and you can still pay off debt. I mean, there's so many different dynamics in terms of what you need to consider when in your personal finance situation. But if investing is a priority, you look at your situation and assess and you can figure those out. But that is definitely changing. The conversation is changing on investing. Mm-hmm. Okay. For sure.
And as we, because I'm conscious of our time here with you, Jen, and I know that we're coming to a close of our part of the conversation. When you say that we need to show what's possible, what particularly would key pieces of direction or not direction, but guidance, or what key pearls of wisdom would you like to make sure to leave our audience with today?
Well, one, I definitely encourage each one of you to just take a look, take some time today, this weekend and the coming week, and just really reflect on your past money stories and see if it's repeating yourself. And if it's repeating itself, is it a money story that's serving you? Or it isn't. And if it isn't, how can you shift that for the better? That's number one. And to always remember, personal finance is personal. I know we tend to look at experts for guidance, which is fine. Money experts or financial experts, financial professionals are experts in money, but they're not experts in your money. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that, each one of us has different goals and aspirations. We have a unique financial situation. It could be maybe there's someone in the household that has a lot of needs health-wise. And so a good portion of their money has to go towards that. So when it comes to financial experts, the thing is here, you need to trust yourself. Yes, use the guidance that financial experts have, but also know that you can trust yourself because you know your situation best. So therefore, you have a gut instinct of where you need to start in terms of investing or whatnot. And understanding that helps you advocate for yourself, especially if you're talking to a financial planner, because if you have that, if you trust your gut, you trust your instincts, and you know your money best, that financial expert, again, is not going to know your finances as like you do. So if you trust yourself and you have your priorities and you know what you want, you are better able to advocate for yourself. So I think when I think of those pieces of advice, I think about those two things, the money stories and trusting yourself. It's all about confidence, which I know you speak of a lot. Mm-hmm.
Yes, certainly. And when you get to the root of where that comes from, though, a lot of that can actually be engineered back to your money story. So I think that there's a really great connection between those two. We're going to be leaving, Jen, go very shortly. So if there is any other questions or anything that anybody would like, please do pop them into the chat now, so that you have so that we have a chance to put them to her. Maria here says that you're giving great advice, and that it really does is something that is very, in my opinion anyway, very practical and tangible. I do want to ask you though, before you go, and like I say to our audience, we do have limited time left, so please do pop your questions in. Tell us about how people, now you talk about pronunciation, and here's where I want to make sure I'm okay with this. The daily Dinero ritual. Because I signed up for this, and what I was very impressed by, as I say, this is where I'm going to tell our audience, here's how I know that Jen really believes in accountability. What I was very impressed with, Jen, is that you're basically tasking the person to hold themselves accountable through you. So when I went, and please do tell us how we can sign up for this, even though I know, but I mean tell everybody else, that you basically give this tool. But then every day you're inviting people to check back in through a form on your site with that gentle sense of accountability, and asking people to do like you've said to people today, which is to take some time to reflect on your money story and so on. So tell us about the daily Dinero ritual.
Yeah, you said it right, and thank you.
I've been practicing. Thank you very much. Glad to hear that. Tell us all about it.
Now we can speak in Spanish for the rest of the time. Now that I know, I'm kidding. So thank you so much for the kind words. It really means a lot to me that you're impressed with that. I created that for a couple reasons. One is that we lack confidence. We want someone to really say we could do it, a cheerleader, right? And essentially the daily Dinero ritual, it's, as the name says, daily. If you choose to do it daily, it helps you get rid of overwhelm. It helps you increase your confidence simply by celebrating your accomplishments, which I mentioned. We tend to just focus on those negative things and forget about the great things that we do with money. And also allows us to stay present to our priorities, our goal, our focus, maybe our focus, or maybe we don't have a focus and it reminds us, well, what should our focus be this week with our finances? Is it just checking in with my account? Is it making sure that I put money towards savings or investing? But it keeps us accountable to that. It also allows us to, with that ritual, remind ourselves of our strengths, because again, this is about building your confidence, because if you have your confidence, you are going to stay in action. And also and with the strengths, and when you remind because it has a place of what are your money strengths. And it also allows you to learn to appreciate yourself more, because sometimes we're so tough on ourselves that when we don't compliment ourselves, it's like you need, and I know it sounds weird, but who takes time to compliment themselves in the mirror? Probably no one. But if you talk nicely to yourself, it does a lot to the brain, right? And because the mind is such a powerful thing. So it's about really loving yourself more. And that daily Dinero ritual does all of that. And you can get it simply, it's free. You can sign up for it at jenhemphill.com/ritual if you're interested.
And it is free. No, it's actually free. You know the way some people say things are free and they're not free at all. It is actually free. And I love that point about doing something daily actually helps you deal with the overwhelm, because you're taking a little bit at the time. You know what I really like about this show, and obviously I'm really biased, but I love when actually the community starts helping each other. Because Monica just put up a question here. This would probably open a can of worms. I wouldn't be surprised if the time does allow, but how does one know where to start with investing? And then Maria comes back to say, I would start investing with money you won't miss and join VectorVest to guide you. And this is what I really like about this show, is in the chat, people start, having their own conversation. Now, JM, I should say, there's a comment here, maybe you'd like to comment on this. One thing would be to change the concept in the Latina culture that having money is related to being a bad person. Now, unfortunately, I have to say I can resonate with that as well, because I sometimes think that can be the Irish psyche too. So maybe as among your parting words, Jen, would you like to maybe just comment on that?
Yeah, when it comes to that, I resonate with that, because I, for a long time, struggled that I felt guilt for having more, for being financially more stable, for having more money. I felt that guilt, and that held me back, because I shouldn't have more in my mind. I shouldn't aspire to more. That was my mentality, because we tend to think, we have that mentality in general, not everybody, again, this is generalities, that the rich are bad, right? But we need to change that narrative, because with more money, you can do great things, right? And so I think it's just shifting that. Is it going to go away overnight? Sometimes I go back, right, to that thinking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in better, I feel guilt for having more, or guilt for buying myself something, right? That guilt. And it's just mindset work, and that mind work, it's an ever going, it's not one day you're done and you have a great mindset forever. No, it's something that you have to continuously work on, especially when you have a bad day, because those thoughts can creep back, and you have to know how to manage that and pick yourself back up.
So, what I'm intrigued by in our conversation, Jen, is that an awful lot of things to do with money have nothing to do with money. And it's a statement that I make all the time on the show, which is, like, for example, one of the things that I believe really helps people manage money better, and particularly women are very good at this, is simply being organized. Knowing your usernames and passwords for your accounts, or knowing when tax deadlines are, or different things like that. So if you're a very organized person, that can really help you. Or if you're somebody that's very good at knowing the value of something, that can be very good. Like, it often has very little to do with coins and notes and balances, but more to do, like you're saying, with mindset or with other things along the way. I'm also just going to come back here. At this stage, there's more and more chats happening there among the community, so I'm going to let them at this stage. And Jen, I really want to thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you. Well, I appreciate a lot of things. I appreciate the fact that you were willing to come on the show, but I appreciate your authenticity and your willingness to give us a perspective, on the statistics and so on, where we can all learn more about the Latina, not just investor, but the Latina personality. I think I've learned more about the personality in the community, as opposed to just the money personality. I think you've given some really practical ideas around the money story, and particularly whether it's repeating itself. And you've also really dealt with the theme that I had put forward as the title of this, which is how to change the narrative. And that is, sometimes it's stopping and reflecting, but it could be journaling, as the daily Dinero ritual allows you to do. But also maybe it is just understanding that there are some facts out there that maybe aren't factual at all, like investing is hard, or, as you mentioned here, the delayed mentality, etc. So for anybody who is going back over the episode, which of course we will be sharing lots and lots and lots of resources afterwards with people, whether it'll be through, obviously the recording is going to sit here on YouTube forever, but also we're going to be sending out an email, and we're going to be writing a blog post, and of course you and I are going to have an IGTV, we're going to have a quick chat as well next week live. So I just want to thank you sincerely.
Oh, thank you, Susan. And I just want to say I appreciate what you do, because just having these conversations are important, and it allows people to connect, yes, right? Exactly. It allows people to connect and feel heard, in a sense, like feel like, oh my goodness, I'm not alone in this. That's what I'm trying to say. So thank you for doing what you do. And I really appreciate you having me. I enjoyed this conversation, and keep up the great work.
Brilliant. Thank you so much indeed. And we will catch up again soon for sure, Jen. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So, as you can see, this is one of the things I love about our new approach with Fantastic Female Fridays, where we're now going to be bringing more and more people to you on the show, as we can get other perspectives. And I'm intrigued here by what we're seeing here happening on the chat. Maribel, hello, how are you? It's super to have you here with us. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to spend the last 8 minutes of the show just showing you how we can take some of the principles that we heard from Jen, and let's turn them into action. Okay, so let me head on over here and let's take a look at the VectorVest program here. So one of the things, for example, that Jen spoke about is the whole idea of making sure that we can see simplicity and consistency happen. Okay, now I'm just going to make sure that you can only see the best part, the best part there of the screen, which is of course the program. So what I want to do here is I would just want to show you if I was looking to apply something consistently and using simplicity, how I would do so with the VectorVest program. Okay, number one is when it comes to picking a stock, I often find that the simplest and very, very effective approach is to head on over here to the VectorVest viewer, pop on in here into the stock viewer, and simply focusing on the top 10 VST stocks. Now, to those of you who aren't familiar with what VST is, V is for value, S is for safety, and T is for timing. By looking at value, safety, and timing together, what we can do here is bring together the best of fundamental and technical analysis. Now, again, maybe some of you aren't aware of what that means. Fundamental analysis is when you look at a company from the perspective of the cash flows and dividends and earnings, etc. That is what that refers to. Technical analysis is when you're looking at the momentum and the direction and the dynamics of a share price, which just means how it's moving, whether the buyers are pushing the sellers out and thus the price is going up, etc. Now, rather than you having to learn a whole lot about that, as I say, in keeping in with Jen's ideas, is that VST brings the whole lot together. It looks at the long-term price appreciation potential of a stock and its predictability and financial performance and its direction, magnitudes and dynamics. In other words, this indicator here really packs a punch. So when I'm thinking about, what might I be interested in investing in the next while, here is where I start to look. VST, value, safety and timing. Now, I do want to particularly bring your attention to this particular stock here in my own, when I say my own database, I mean the database that is closest to my geographical area, which is Europe, and Hapag-Lloyd. Right, let's just take a look here. I'm going to take a look at the Hapag-Lloyd graph, right? So Hapag-Lloyd, H-A-P-A-G, Hapag-Lloyd here. Okay, and this is a beautiful graph, right? This is an absolutely beautiful graph. I'm going to take me off here for a moment so that you can really see the whole graph together, okay? So if you look here from the bottom left-hand corner, we can see that this share price was at €74 this day last year. Today it is 3 times that at €224. So obviously this would have been a beautiful stock to buy, wouldn't it? Well, how might we have spotted that? Well, you see, look up here, VST. I'm going to take off the other indicators here so you can see what I am talking about. See here, your VST here was really, really, really high, except for when it had this little bit of a drop here. The VST was very, very, very high. VST, by the way, goes between 0 to 2. Above 1 is favorable, below 1 is unfavorable. The lower it is, the less favorable it is, but the higher it is, the more favorable it is. So when you see here a stock that has a VST up back here at the beginning at let's say 1.45, that's very high. Similarly here it was at 1.42. Here it was a 1.56. Here it was at 1.61. So you can see here that it was very, very, like a very significant, at a very significant level. The question is, would I have known that last year, right? So let's go back and see. Let's go back and see. Let's go back to the 9th of December, 2020. And 9th of December was a Wednesday. Here we go. Let's see if it's in the top 10, okay? And as you can see, it wasn't. Now, what I can do is, now I can take a look though at what was. Now, I'll tell you at the time I had this stock. This had been a top VST stock back earlier on in the year. But let's take a look. Here's Verbio. Here's Verbio. Here's Better Building. This one is in Amsterdam. So let's take a look at Verbio. This was the top stock back at that stage. If I was just a quick test, Verbio, over that period of time, as you can see, it has increased by 132%. The stock that I had increased by 129% that period of time. Now, one of them didn't, as you can see here. There was one stock that did fall. And I'm not trying to say that VST picks stocks that always rise, but what I am saying is it is a simple way, and it's a very consistent approach that you can take to simply finding early companies in order to take a look into, okay? So when it comes to simplicity, what I would say is, for those of you who are interested in starting off and investing in individual stocks, as opposed to anything else, because of course you absolutely can start off by investing in ETFs, for example, exchange traded funds or other things like that. Okay, so my first point here that I wanted to refer back to was consistency, and then the second one is that was simplicity. Let's take a look at consistency. What I often find people wonder is, like, how do I know if an approach works? And that is my answer to that is, well, check it out to see if it works consistently over time. So we have here a tool in VectorVest called Backtester. Okay, Backtest. I'm going to click here, new. And I'm going to backtest an idea, right? So I'm going to backtest an idea. And I'm going to call this confirmed call and VST, right? Now, let me explain. What I'm going to do, VST, right? So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to build a custom trading system. And I'm simply going to go in, I'm going to buy in the market when I see the market indicator, okay, the most conservative one, when I see that is giving a green signal, or it's up, it's a bullish signal, I'm going to buy. And what I'm going to buy is exactly what I told you. I'm going to buy the top 10 VST. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to find the top 10 VST in here. So I'm going to my long searches, and I'm going to buy. Let me just take a look here. It looks like I don't have it. Now, of course I don't, because I didn't build it yet. So I'm just going to cancel this for a moment. I'm going to pop on over here to, I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to pop on over here to Unisearch, and I'm going to build a search. And all I'm going to search for is where I want the stocks to be VST above 1. Okay, that's all. That's all I want. That's all I want, and I'm going to save this search. Okay, yes, I would like to save it, and I'm going to put this into my long searches. Okay, in here I'm going to say that this is top 10 VST. Okay, here we are. Yes, now I have just done that, and it's a long search. All right, so okay, and I want this to go into my long searches. Yeah. Okay. Name is already used. That's because of okay. Right, let's cancel it, and top 10 VST. Wonderful. Now, let me go back over here. Going to create a new backtest again. Select an existing trading system. So, sorry, not an existing one. Cancel. I want to build a new one. My point is that you can start this off, but then you may need to build a system yourself, like I showed you, if it's not there already. So go in here to confirm calls, and when I'm in here in confirm calls, then what I would like to do is go into my long searches, and I would like to only buy top 10 VST. Wonderful. Okay. And when it goes down, when the confirm call goes down, when the market indicator is that the market is now turning bearish, I'm going to go to cash and finish. Okay. This is my test idea. Now let's see whether this works, and I'm going to run this for the past back as far as I can go, which is start date back as far as I can go, back in 2005, 21st of June 2005. Okay, now I'm going to let that run. Now what I'm wondering is whether consistency is going to matter here, right? So I'm just going to let that run. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to bring myself back on screen. And I'm just going to let that run there now. So what's going to happen now is you'll be able to see that it's going to grow, and it's going to run that test to see whether that consistently works or not. So that simplicity of simply buying the top 10 VST stocks with the consistency of adding that to a market timing approach and simply running that back since 2005, let's see how that goes. And Backtester can do that. Now I could make this infinitely more complicated, and Backtester could handle it. I could add in all sorts of bells and whistles. And if you want to know more about Backtester, you can absolutely find out more about it on our website. But I just want to show you how you can actually try out what Jen was talking about in terms of consistency. Okay. Now I'm just going to let that continue to run. At the moment, it is run all the way from 2005 up to 2018. Okay, so let's just see where we land at the end. And what I want to know, what I'm interested in, is if I was to take that approach consistently over that period of time, how would I have performed? Okay. I didn't know VectorVest by the way, back in 2005. Now, not long afterwards, I have to tell you, in the grand scheme of things. And there we are. We are cooked. We are cooked. Okay, let's take a look then at the report. Let's take a look at the summary report. And here we are. And I'm just going to just take my screen down there just a little bit there, because I just want to make it nice and pretty. Okay, so let me just, there we are. Okay. Now, so what you can see here now is that the return on investment, can I expand this? Yeah, there we are. The return on investment of that strategy would be 26% over time. 26% is how much. Now, if you want to know, because I always use this, if you want to know how long it would take to double your money in that period of time. Now, this is a really back of an envelope approach. Divide your return by 72. That will tell you how long it takes to double your money using the power of compounding. It's an old actuary trick that I learned when I was studying financial maths back in university some time ago. Now, I'm going to divide that by 26.78, which means that every 2.68 years I would be doubling my money based on that. And that is it. Now, that is on average over the past 21 minus 2005 is 16 years. That is where 100,000 back in 2005 would turn into 540,000 now. That is by following that approach consistently. And I took that for Europe. Of course you could apply that to the US. Of course you could apply that to Canada. Of course you could apply that to any of the other databases. And you saw how quickly I did it, and I built it there from scratch in front of you. I can see my winners and losers. I actually had more losers than winners. That often surprises people. I had more losers than winners, right? So I had 262 losing stocks, 228 winning stocks, but the winners existed because, or the return existed because I held the winners longer than I held the losers, okay? So you can see there everything else that's in there, and particularly it was the last couple of years there where a really big change came about, as well as back here around about 2013, etc. And you can see the rocky road. Now, it prevented an awful lot of the problems that arose in 2008, 2007. And you can see everything else there in that report. Okay, this is the strategy I applied, which is that I was going in based on the confirmed up call, and then I was buying the top 10 VST stocks, and when I was selling anything, then it was being sold and replaced by another top 10 VST stock as well. Simples. So that is how I just wanted to take into consideration something that we heard Jen talk about, and that is consistency and simplicity. Simplicity is using something very simple that has a lot of, packs a punch from the point of view of the VST indicator, and then using it consistently. And that is an example of the type of result that can come about as a result. So, on that note, ladies and indeed gentlemen, I've loved having you today. I always love to talk to other people about their perspectives on money, and that is our plan for 2022, where we are going to bring lots more people in to talk to us and to bring their perspectives. And then what I'll do afterwards is I'll take their perspective and I will translate it into investing insights using the VectorVest program. In addition, of course, for any of you that missed our show this week, we also ran the ESG and Tech Show on Monday, and that was where I took you through the top 5 trends, in my opinion, the top 5 trends that are shaping the world of ESG and technology as we move into 2022. I want to thank you all sincerely for being here with me during the various episodes and themes that we've run throughout the show. I love delivering the show, and I love when you talk to me, which you do, and it's always an absolute joy. So please do, of course, feel free to reach out in the meantime. You can follow us at VectorVest on Instagram. You can follow us on Twitter at Susan Hayes _ where you'll find me, or at VectorVest is where you'll find VectorVest. And of course, you can always find us on the Facebook page as well. Thank you indeed. Maria says, thank you, Susan. Great session. I really enjoyed it. I'm delighted that you did too, Maria. And I really, like I say, appreciate all of you being here. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful festive season, and I'm going to see you next month. Bye.